What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Kind of Funny Games Reacts here on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the pride of Long Island, Colin Moriarty.
It's good to be here with you today.
The pure one, Tim Gettys.
Let Tim host.
And our very special guest, Andrea Renee.
Hey, guys.
From all over the internet, a million
I'm
places
here.
you can find
Yay.
her. We are here to talk about the PlayStation 4 Slim.
Ooh.
Colin and I were in the airport. We were trying to find really mediocre breakfast. Mission succeeded in Denver.
Yeah,
Good Lord, that burrito.
It was fucking terrible. Terrible breakfast.
I opened my Twitter. Somebody tweeted images of a slim PlayStation 4 in a box to me. I showed it to Colin. Colin immediately went into overdrive. It's rare that this man gets excited for anything, but he spent the rest of the afternoon, even on the plane, looking for updates, going on GAF, doing this. And we didn't realize at the time, this was the person breaking the news, talking to you and I, sending us. So when he finally showed up with the box, and I was like, can you put it on top of your PlayStation 4? He did. He did all these things. It appears to be real. Colin, catch me up.
Yeah, so we were in the airport. That's what I said on Colin and Greg Live this morning, which is that we're at the nexus of this in a weird way. Like, we were the ones that were randomly tweeted these pictures at first of this thing that people thought were fake of a PlayStation 4 box, of the slim box. But you and I knew better than to be skeptical of this because of not any inside information, but two reasons. A, it's obvious that they were going to do this, and B, we know what happened with PS3 Slim in the leak in 2009, which, as we said before, was 25 times weirder than this, and it was totally fucking real.
PlayStation 3 Slim just shows up in some black market alleyway, and they have a shaky cam of some guy doing this.
Yeah, it was amazing. So for people that don't know, and you can look up the video, it's got to still exist somewhere. In 2009, I think in Singapore and Hong Kong or something like that, a PS3 Slim with a loose controller just appeared months before they ever announced it. And everyone was like, what the fuck is this? And it was just this like shitty cell phone camera. And everyone's like, well, this is clearly fake. And then a box leaked, and everyone's like, well, this is clearly fake. And then it was the exact fucking unit, and it was the exact box. And I remember when we did Podcast Beyond back then, we were very skeptical, and I think rightly so. But when I saw this new box, I was like, hey, this looks right. And this obviously makes sense. I mean, I don't think anyone's surprised that they're doing this. We talked about it a lot ad nauseum.
Well, you predicted it, right? Like, as soon as we finish this for the Twitch stream we're doing, hey, YouTube, how are you? We're putting up PS I Love You XOXO, which you can watch on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames as well. And in that thing, you talk about the fact that we're filming this evergreen episode to put up during our stream to debut the new set. And if any news happens about this September event, the September 7th event for PlayStation, we'll do a reacts. And here we are.
Yeah,
it always happens when we get close.
I knew, but we've been doing this a long time. We knew better. Nothing is announced, and especially in the Sony world, without being leaked. So, and these things have been manufactured apparently for a while. Now they're leaking out to warehouses. These things are probably falling off the back of a truck or like just sneaking out.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Falling
not
off
as early as the PS3 Slim, that of course wasn't even boxed.
Yeah.
That was how early they snuck it out of a factory. But what's interesting about this is not only that the unit's real, obviously. Eurogamer put up some stuff today. They put up a video of it turning on, proving that it was real, but then they removed it. And it says, upon taking legal advice, we have removed the video previously referenced in this article.
Yeah, I'm sure PlayStation came down hard on them about it. It's good that they showed it turning on, because otherwise we'd have like another Nintendo situation on our hands.
With the NX, which was, digitally printed NX.
Which I think I was on that video when we talked about it. And then like before you guys were able to upload the video, like it was proved that it was a 3D print, and I was like, no!
Yeah, it was happening. Yeah, I thought, that was very believable. This particular thing, I think, was because multiple people were selling these things. It only took a couple hours for everyone to realize that this was obviously real. Anyone that was skeptical about it was quickly not skeptical about it.
They started presenting more and more information where it was the box, but then it was the back of the box and the top of the box and the unit out and the unit on top of the PS4 and all these different things.
Yeah, so it was funny. Like when we took off, people were still skeptical, but it looked like it was real. And then by the time we landed, the cat was out of the bag. What's interesting about this particular thing are not only the pictures going around. So the unit itself, which is back here, but it's so dark that you can't really see it.
It looks like a giant triangle.
It basically is just it's not like mass. It's not like the PS3 Fat to the PS3 Slim in terms of size discrepancy, but it is smaller. I think it's sleek. A lot of people think it's ugly. I think it looks fine. I don't care if a console is a fucking cardboard box.
I think the original looks way sleeker.
I think it looks sleeker too, but Greg and I have talked about this in the past with like these special edition consoles. It's like, who cares? Like the thing could be like a fucking cardboard box with circuits coming out of it. If it plays the games, that's totally fine.
You say that, but look at how much flack Xbox One got for looking like a giant VCR next to PS4 when they both launched, right?
Sure.
Like form factor matters to a lot of people.
It does matter. I think what a lot of people were mystified by was how much bigger it was than PS4, and the brick was still not inside the unit, which was like,
obviously
what the hell?
they fixed that now. Xbox One S looks
of course.
great.
Oh, Xbox One S.
Yeah, you're right. about that. But I saw this and I was excited for two reasons. One is that I lug my PS4 back and forth a lot, and so I mean we have multiple PS4s, but I like to have my PS4 with all my stuff on it. I don't have to like data save or whatever. And it's clearly going to be cheap. And it also answers a question for us, which was, are they going to? One of the pinnacle questions was within this new kind of move towards not modular consoles yet, but the console iterations,
PlayStation Neo.
where they go to just abandon the old version of the PlayStation and call the new one the PS4, which we now know
they should have.
Which was the answer is no, right? Like we know now that they're not going to.
This,
do that.
to me, this is the least interesting thing that they could have done. Like this, a slim plate. What's cool about this?
It's smaller.
It's going to be
small and
cheaper.
No, I get that, but I mean, it's just
Cheaper
like
is
especially
really the big
with what
thing.
Xbox just did with the
the
One S. It's like that's their slim and it's better. This is just a slim.
Yeah, that's an argument people have been making, and I get that argument, but
especially with Neo coming, it's like this, and I get it. I get like, okay, cool. This just replaces the original PlayStation,
Sure.
and that's fine and cool. Be able to. We don't know the price point yet, but once we get that, and if it's officially as low, like you were saying some numbers that I'm like, that's insane to me. Like if they got down to $200,
yeah,
like,
I don't think. I mean,
I
it would
doubt
be.
that
It
will
would be.
ever
yeah.
happen.
I think the price point is probably going to be $249.99. I think that, which would be $100 cheaper. PS4 has always been sold at a profit, not a huge profit, but they're making money on it. So it's different than the PS3 even being sold at $600, which was sold at a loss. And so Sony's counting on that revenue. They've done certain things with the unit to make it smaller. As I was explaining to someone yesterday, if you manufacture literally 20 million of these and have made it 20 or 30% smaller, you're going to save millions of dollars just on plastic manufacture. So there's little things that they've done to like remove costs from this. The optical out is not in the box anymore. People were upset about this. I really do bet that they have hard data showing that most people don't use it. It's the same thing Greg and I were talking about in Colin and Greg Live, that everyone's like, well, why did they remove couch co-op or this or that? And it's like, because you don't use it. We have all the data. We have heat mapping and all this. It shows what. So I bet you most people don't use it.
Well,
and this is also a low-end PS4.
That's the big thing. That's the big thing, is that the consumer I think this is going to speak to the most is either it's not my primary PS4 or my friends have a PS4. I've looked at it. I've been interested, but you're not the tech guy. If you are the tech guy like us, you already own a PlayStation 4. Or Neo now is suddenly exciting, and like that's how they got to do it, right? Of like they're gonna come out and be like, cool, we are introducing the Neo. I assume since this is leaking that Neo isn't this year like we used to be predicting, and then all these different shakeups. I think that Scorpio did put the fear of God into them, and they are trying to change it. And if that's the case, then it does become, all right, cool, here's the slim model. It's cheaper. If you need an optical port, if you need the full-fledged PlayStation 4 experience, get it before it goes out of stock everywhere. This will be what's here as the budget model, and then we are bringing the Neo. Get ready for that. That's gonna be the crazy model.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It disappoints me that I wish they were going a little bit more like just full bore in one direction, just being like, this is the PlayStation 4. Like, I wish the Neo was PlayStation 4.
I mean, I think they still have to have multiple options, though, because gaming is expensive. And if Neo was the only option going forward, I think that would alienate a large community for PlayStation. And they've been clearly doing really well with PS4 so far in this generation. And they don't want to slow down that growth. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, you get a taste of like how good sales can be, and you can't go backwards now. Like, you can only go forwards. And I think if they only offered one model, they would be limiting the amount of sales they could do, at least globally.
I mean, that's the whole thing with it, right? Is that if you haven't bought a PlayStation 4 yet, what is your holdup? Maybe it is $100, and so there's your answer.
Yeah,
and then it's also
that's
for
fair.
me, you, Colin, not Kevin, he sucks. Nick Chester, because he's cool. For people who are excited for tech and cool, you're gonna buy a Neo, you theoretically, right? And if they're gonna sell it on 4K, if they're gonna sell it on a better VR experience, they can sell it on the optical cable being there too. And they can go up $50. They can keep it at the same price. They can do whatever.
It's a good point. Like, let's take features out of the lesser ones that you have to pay for the higher
Well,
one.
no,
like,
not
we've
not
seen
so
that.
you have to, but like so that you and I, who already have our PlayStation 4 and are totally set, want to buy a new PlayStation 4. Because that was always the thing.
Right.
I have the fat PS3. I don't need any of these slims. I wish I had them except that George Foreman one. But you know what I mean?
All
Like,
the backwards compatibility, and that'll be fun.
Well, I mean, I think the optical cable, as you said, is more of a premier experience,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you look at the headsets or even like the audio equipment that uses the optical cable, I mean, that stuff's not cheap. It's super expensive.
yeah, if you're going for like the nice Astro headsets and all the mix amps.
300, 350. You know, like those are as expensive as the console itself. So, I mean, I think it makes sense. It's just like Apple getting rid of the headphone jack, right? It's just like they're trying to push the technology in the direction that the consumers are saying, like, hey, we don't use this thing. You know, we want.
Well, that's a little different.
I agree. It
Yeah.
was a bad example, and I fully admit that it was a bad
I get
example.
what you're saying, though, in the
But,
sense,
like-
like Apple does this. Apple has created this,
But I'm
this
saying,
system
like,
of the multiple
They're
products.
trying to say, like, we are trying to make this more affordable and change the form factor in a meaningful way, and to do that we're making compromises, and we've, as you mentioned, the research shows that like the compromise is okay, the audience is for the most part okay with it.
Yeah, no one's going to manufacture, no major corporation conglomerate's going to manufacture like something like this and put hundreds of millions of dollars on the line if like in potential sales and then recouped R&D and all these kinds of things, which is, you know, these consoles are expensive. So when you sell millions of them, you're making, you know, exponentially more money than that. No one's going to do that without data. And the data, I'm sure, clearly shows that no one's using this or few people are using it. And that it's that wasn't removed as a coincidence. The engineers, there was a lot of conjecture that a PS4 Slim might not have been possible in the way that we wanted it, because a lot of engineers or people with engineering backgrounds or knowledge were saying like it's going to be hard for them to fit all that stuff in a box much smaller than that. Think about how much smaller the PS4 is than the Xbox One, right? Like, but they did make it smaller, and so they had to remove things from it. And it's like, well, you're not going to remove the USB drives, you're not going to, ports, you're not going to remove all these things. So you have to take something out, and it's going to be the thing that's least used on the back of your console.
The proof in the pudding for this is I remember when I had a PlayStation 3 already, and so I'm working at IGN. And that's a year and a half, 2 years in. It was when the first price drop happened. Remember when they bundled it with MotorStorm, and I bought it then. And I remember going back to Missouri to have a Christmas or whatever, and two brothers there opened up their gift, and they were in high school, and it was a PlayStation 2, and it was like the $99 PlayStation 2.
The really slim one.
And they lost their fucking mind. Like, there's such a swatch of the country, of the world that isn't, I need cutting edge. I'm waiting for Scorpio. I feel fucked over that I got this PlayStation 4 when they're going to announce Neo. There's so many people who don't know. They are fixating on the price point. So that's what this is for. It's not for us, with the exception of Colin, who wants a smaller thing in his girlfriend's house. She doesn't want that huge PlayStation 4.
Well, it would just be easy.
Aaron, just let him have it.
she doesn't care. It's more convenient for me. But to the point of this answers a question, right? Like, so this answers a question that it exists now. Now we know there are going to be multiple SKUs. But it wasn't an obvious answer because this is new territory. So in my mind, they created, this is an unforced error on Sony's part in a way, even if it's a smart move, because they have to ultimately deal with a marketing challenge. And the marketing challenge was either going to be, we release the Neo, keep maybe the price point the same, start eating it on every console sold, or we sell it even and make our money back on our 30% rips on all the games sold. Or we have these multiple SKUs, which they're going to do, which I think is smart. The price needs to fit the narrative though, right? So I really do believe that the Slim will be no more expensive than $249, and I really do believe in my mind that they could even do it a little bit cheaper than that.
That's crazy. Where's it at now? The PS4 is
at $350.
$350, and you think it's going to go down to $250?
Yeah.
Wow. No optical port, man.
Well, it's not only that. It's not only that. It's that you have to. Things are smaller. The components are not going to be. When you mass buy millions of components from AMD when you're making your PS4s or whatever, and you have these contracts, like that's how things get smaller and cheaper over time, because now they need the same innards, and they're just not as sophisticated in 2016 as they were in 2012 and 2013 when they were really putting the final kit together. So that's not beyond the realm of reason. Like, they've only dropped the price $50 in 3 years. They're making a lot of money on this console. So now they have to turn it around and say, like, are we going to play a game of volume? And the reason that I think it's going to be $249 and not $299 is because they have to create an aura around Neo that if you're going to have a $50 or $100 difference between these two consoles, it's not going to do it. You need to make make Neo look really impressive. By making the other console seem not as impressive. That is the unforced error and the inherent thing of doing these not modular, but these incremental type consoles.
So what do you anticipate on September 7th? They come out and announce this clearly, but is Neo this year? Is Neo next year? Is Neo, like, are they going to, because like when we left E3, what we all said was, man, Microsoft handled this perfectly in terms of here's the new Xbox Slim or Xbox S.
But did they?
I mean, compared to how Sony was bungling it, this thing was leaking, it's more expensive, but you don't need to, but and it'll be 4K, man, maybe it's VR in your house, just in some random business insiders like, yeah, it exists, what about it?
No, I was super excited about this Scorpio announcement, and I got an Xbox One S on launch day, but I think...
Was that your first Xbox One?
No, I have the Day One edition,
nice.
But like, I think that they really kind of shot themselves in the foot in a way that they stifled Xbox One sales. Like the actual original box, like no one, there's no reason to buy an Xbox One now.
But people are buying it.
Anthony Carboni did it, sucker.
But they're not buying it in mass numbers. I mean, if you look at the sales, Xbox only beat PlayStation in sales in the month of August because of Xbox One S.
Well, yeah, but I mean that shows that it's working though. That shows that it's not shooting
No,
in the
but what
foot.
I'm
At least
saying
they're
is like,
beating them.
but that's for the S. Like I'm talking about the original. Like that Xbox is like dead in the water.
But yeah, but I mean, I think
been
that the
dead for a
S
while.
is kind of the replacement, right? Like I think that the other one just exists just because it's already out there, so they're going to sell it. But
Right,
I
but-
think that it won't exist in a year.
No, probably not. It'll be like on discount shelves or
Yeah.
whatever as part of retail, like holiday discounts and things like that. But I mean, there's a lot of people out there that were online making comments about how they now are going to not even bother with their plans to buy an Xbox One S because Scorpio's coming in a year. Why spend, minimum $300 now to get in on the Xbox console, community when I can wait for like the bigger, powerful, cooler thing in a year?
Very solid point, which is the exact same thing here too.
But see, that's always been the thing for me is that, and this is where I think we're talking about PlayStation right now, of course, but like when you talk about who you're targeting, Scorpio and everything left, I was like, that is a good selling point, whatever, more powerful Xbox, you haven't been moving as many units, right? But as somebody who bought an Xbox on day one, I'm fine with that. I know how often I turn that machine on. I know how much I use that machine. I'm super excited for Gears. That's fine. I have not gotten enough mileage out of it to be like, I need to buy a new one. I need to buy a little bit faster one. But like I've said with Neo, if they come out and they're like, Neo loads your games a little bit faster, does this a little bit better, and it's not just 4K, it's not just VR. If they come out and sell it right to me, I'm gonna be like, well, yeah, of course. I've enjoyed my PlayStation 4 for hundreds of hours. They can have my money again.
I think that the two companies are playing different games now. And the interesting thing about Slim, to your point earlier about why the S, the Xbox One S, or whatever the hell it's called, is more powerful, it's because these things are made in vacuums. Sony clearly didn't realize that Microsoft was going to do that to the console. That's really the first console iteration that makes, that is a demonstrative, that gives it a demonstrative power surge while being called the same console. There's no other console that's ever done that, right? Like when you really think about like on a component by component basis, we've had multiple iterations of consoles going back to 2600, but they played the games the same way. We used the example of the NES to the top loader NES with the Dogbone controller 8 years later that played games identically. Sony was playing a different game here than Microsoft. Microsoft's actually being way more shrewd, I think, in the way that they're approaching this, and Sony has to now react, which is weird for them. As we said at E3, the announcement of the Scorpio is Microsoft's admittance that they lost. They lost. And I don't believe for one fucking second that that's not their new console, by the way. So like I don't believe for a 1 second that that's not their new console, considering how powerful it's supposed to be. They're gonna go out there now and claim that for the next 5 years, they're gonna limit their developers to make games for the old Xbox One that can just run better on the new Xbox. No way. So like.
You think they're like pushing up their plans for what was supposed to be in the next generation?
I think that was always their intent.
I think that's just what the next generation is, though. I just think that is like just whatever where we're at now. It's all just calling it different things, but the Scorpio is just going to be a better Xbox. But I think even this generation, we hit this thing where the jump from PS3 to PS4, the jump from Xbox 360 to Xbox One, it's like not that big. And I think that it's only going to get smaller, and it's only going to have more teraflops.
I mean, I think you say that, and I think to somebody on the outside that doesn't know like what happens on the back end of game dev, that the jump is not that big doesn't really seem that way, but in reality, it actually is quite big. When you think about what's being asked of all the people who are making the games and how they have to both service this new audience who wants the fastest, most powerful thing, and the audience that's like, hey, I spent hundreds of dollars buying this thing that you told me was going to be really cool, and now you're telling me it's not as cool as the cooler thing. And the devs are really the ones who are kind of caught in between, going, how do I service this audience who, is thinking that they should have the same experience as the person who's on like the new fancy thing. I mean, that's something I think we're going to see come out a lot more in the.
But I feel like that's just us getting used to an argument that's already been for so long, right? Forever, us peasants have looked up at the PC master race and seen them with their millions of frames per second and their Fallout mods and been like, why not me? And like this is just that same gap, right? I feel.
Well, the reason that I think that Microsoft's playing now a different game than Sony and they're forcing the issue now is because Neo is an incremental step. Scorpio isn't an incremental step. Scorpio is a quantum leap compared to the Xbox One in a lot of ways.
Or so they've said.
But like they have developers now and that sizzle reel and all that kind of stuff. Like it seems like to me, what I think, like my kind of outside theory is that it's not coming out next year and that like it's going to and that it's going to get delayed because like the components are very expensive. They need to give it time to cool off a little bit on the market. Neo, meanwhile, I think was already locked in. I think Sony was probably horrified when they saw the Scorpio and what it was, and I think they're probably trying to overclock it and stuff like that. But there's with software, but they're not, or with firmware, but they're not going to. They have this. The PS4 is a small increment, or Neo is a small incremental step towards the Apple movement Microsoft's movement seems to be more of like a punch in the face. And the 4-year distance between Xbox One and Xbox Scorpio is the same 4-year distance between the original Xbox and the Xbox 360. So it wouldn't be unprecedented for them to bring a new console out at that time or a year even after that because they lost. The unfortunate thing is that they didn't really lose numerically, right? Like we've said it before over and over again. Xbox One actually sold really well. And when you combine PS4 and Xbox One sales, they're up 60% over Xbox 360 and PS3 sales at their respective times on the market, which is almost about 3 years. But they're getting clowned out. And optics are everything.
PlayStation 4 is such a runaway success that you look at the Xbox One numbers like, oh, they're failing, but they're not at all.
So like the games can play, like, so you can play a game, like I believe that a game that runs on Xbox One could run on Scorpio. And I think that maybe they'll release it under the guise that like everything will be backwards compatible, but eventually they're going to reach a wall where they're going to be like, games are only going to play on this unit. And I don't think you're going to see that on Neo because it's just not that big of a leap compared like with the rumored specs. So I think they're just kind of going in two different directions. And unfortunately, well, maybe fortunately for us because we're the consumers and the invisible hand will ultimately speak. But like I think only one of these things can really ultimately win.
So where do you come down on what's going to happen in September? September 7th, PlayStation happens.
So
Andrew House walks out, he pops his collar.
Right.
What does he say about Neo? No, Slim is real. It's happening. Kevin's moving the windows around. We know, Kevin. It's fine. How are you holding up, big guy?
I don't know.
That wasn't a word. That wasn't even a word, you tired motherfucker.
So not very good. So
what's going to happen on September 7th in Neo?
So I think Neo's clearly revealed. I think it probably comes out. I still feel like it's going to come out the same day VR comes out, but I don't know. I don't know if that's smart or not smart. Like I'm not intelligent enough in marketing at all, and even a little bit to know if it's smart to overshadow VR.
It sounds like a bad idea to me to launch simultaneous hardware like that.
It's going to drop.
I don't know.
$850.
The reason I don't think it's a bad idea, and the reason why I think it actually might be an interesting notion is because if you don't have a VR pre-order now, you're not getting one. So people are going to be hungry for something, right? And if you say like, well, when VR becomes available, this thing's going to run it better. That might be an interest, and they don't maybe own a PS4. They're an enthusiast, and so they're willing to shell out another $400 is probably what the console will cost. I think that, or maybe even less, maybe it'll be $350. I don't know, but to me, I feel like there's multiple ways you can go about it. So clearly, they're going to show this. The Slim will be out the day of the announcement, I think, or that week, and then because the channel's already getting flooded now, because that's how these are getting leaked, so that it's clearly weeks away. Then the Neo, I think, is being manufactured clearly now, and it has been being manufactured, and that's going to be out probably in October or November. I don't think that they're going to hold it. I think Sony is in an unfortunate position where they just didn't realize what their competitor was doing.
The other body.
And they're locked in. The components are bought. The R&D's done. They've sunk probably tons of money into this thing, and I don't think that they can change course now. I think the only way that they can make it more powerful is on the firmware side or the software side. I think they're going to try to do that. And then I think they ride it out, and I don't think that PS5 is as far away as people think it is either. Like I think that it'll, to the incremental thing, I don't think you release another PS4. In fact, what I was saying when they announced this whole movement to begin with was, why are you even doing this? You could have really waited a year and a half and just released the next console. So I don't like, because that would have been, PS1 came out in 95, well 94 technically in Japan, December 94, but 95 in the West. PS2 5 years later. So it wouldn't have been, this is, the last generation was weird. And I don't think people, like, the economic downturn fucked the entire thing up. And consoles shouldn't exist for that long. So even before that, we were going to get, and I think things will become not incremental, but maybe even modular, which I think they should have been doing already. And then the third pillar to this, and this is what we were talking about, and this is where things get really weird, and this is like where things get really fanciful, is it possible that they're going to announce a handheld? Because there's
Trinity.
There's like some interesting.
Throw it up.
There's some
Throw
interesting.
up the Trinity, everybody.
No, they're definitely not. I mean, come on. They haven't been giving Vita love at any of their shows.
But
recently.
they figured it out. They figured out why the Vita didn't work. Let's double down on gamers.
This isn't Greg and I being like the advocates of Vita that we are. We're the world's greatest Vita advocates.
It is.
And you guys can go investigate this on NeoGAF. I'm not going to like get too far into it because I haven't read all of it yet. But basically, the gist of it is that on a Chinese message board months ago, a guy was leaking all this information about Neo and about the Slim, and even drew what the Slim looked like to a T on a piece of paper. And everyone's like, well, he was right about that stuff. And by the way, he said something that might indicate to some people that they're manufacturing handhelds, which was apparently secondhand information. And people are like, well, you don't want to read too much into that. But people are basically saying like, well, if the guy was right about that stuff, then why wouldn't he know that too?
Yeah.
And so I've said for years, as we said on PSI or on Colin Greg Live, that Sony is the one company crazy enough to do a handheld again. And I think that Vita was released at a very unfortunate time for Vita.
It was always talking. It was stuck between the Sony that was PlayStation 3 and the Sony that would become PlayStation 4. Where PlayStation 4 Sony has been a runaway success because they came out on that stage in February and said, we are about gamers. We are here about games. Let's talk about games. We fucked up with the PS3. Here's what it's about. No gimmicks. This is what it's going to be. And PlayStation 3, of course, was the hubris of, you'll buy this, you'll get a second job, da-da-da-da-da, we're going to do all these dumb things. And then Vita was somewhere in the middle where it was like, it's console gaming on the go, but it's touch gaming as well. Like, well, it's gamer, but it's not. It's hard. It had trophies. And we're all like, what? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's so. Do I think it's likely? No, but I think
I
that's
hope
it
it
because
is,
some people are saying like, well, it could be the NX because Foxconn creates all of these things in China, but the NX wouldn't be being manufactured months ago. The NX is probably not even being manufactured now. So to me, it's like that doesn't make any sense. But that's possible. But it just gave me there's food for thought. But there's every reason to be totally skeptical of that.
Yeah.
I can't read Mandarin and or Cantonese, so I can't go back to the source of it. And people,
I just want a Neo and a PSVR bundle for holiday. Is that so much to ask? Can we get
By
that?
holidays? I mean, that sounds likely, right? I don't know if they necessarily would have it by holidays.
It would
I think
probably
that's
be
more
like
manufacturing.
That box would be like
$1,000.
the Rock Band crate. It'd be so huge.
Yeah, that would be awesome though. But again, I don't know if they necessarily need to do that because the people that are
They definitely don't. I'm just saying I want it.
yeah. I think the people like you will buy both that want it. You know what I mean? I don't think they need to necessarily bundle them together. I think they will be promoted together. And I think that it's the perfect kind of bait and switch thing of just like, hey, you're in the store, you're seeing this VR thing. If you don't already have a PlayStation, you could get this super cheap one and it will work. But there's a better one, and that's how you sell people, you know? And like that is where this all goes to the modular consoles or incremental consoles or whatever. Consoles aren't phones, I totally get that, but they're obviously moving in the same direction as phones do. And when you look at like just the iPhone, we're not even talking about Android. Android's a whole other ball game.
It sucks. That's a shitty ball game. That's minor league ball game. If you have that, you're Kevin and you're stupid and you don't like having real
Hey, there
MLB
is
stuff.
nothing wrong with having Android. I have an iPhone, but I had Android for a very long time.
But then you were like, you woke up. You're like, wait a second. I'm living in caveman times and I could be in the
maybe.
Jetsons.
No, the Android
Maybe.
thing's the same thing as the PC gaming thing, where it's just like they are getting the best if they are putting the right things into it and if they care enough. And they're not getting if they're not going to Best Buy and buying the cheapest Dell that they see. You know, you can't compare that to whatever, just walking and buying any Android phone. Android isn't as, you know, one thing as Apple is.
Sure,
So with Apple, there was always the phone, then there's the S update. Phone, S update, phone, S update. But no matter what, it was still iOS. Then the iOS would update, and you could use the iOS on all the different phones. Then it eventually reached a point that you couldn't, like the iPhone 4 can't do
We
it.
could make this a whole episode.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
Android versus iOS.
Oh yeah, but the iOS 10 or whatever. But I think that idea is where we're gonna go with consoles, where it's just like it is gonna be more about the OS and what that goes across, and the gameplay is on this OS, and eventually it is gonna hit a point where no, it's not compatible.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
most of the time it's going to
good.
be, and sometimes it's going to chug, and it's not going to be great. And just like playing games on iOS, they're not even games, like apps. Twitter works like shit on an iPhone 3G, right? But that's only if you're using.
Doesn't everything?
Yeah, but that's the point.
That
though.
tech is like 3 or 4 years old now.
Yep.
You know.
And I think that is where we're going to be heading with games, where it's just like it sucks. All right, well, get a new one then.
Yeah,
Sucks.
I think so. I mean, I think because there's money to be made there, and technology is just, you know, it's progressing to a degree where I think it's necessary, and I also think the PC space is actually starting to embarrass the console space in a way, like in a way where power really does matter now at this point, where games. It seemed like things were tightening for a while, like when the consoles came out.
Of course, because it was more comparable, right?
Exactly.
But PCs are able to pull away now.
But again, PCs are pulling away, and just you can see it on a lot of games. So now people that are able to focus just on one console or just have a lot of talent, like Naughty Dog, make games that look like they run on
Sure,
high-end
make an
PCs,
exclusive, yeah.
But so I think there's a lot of excuses being made too, but I don't know anything about the engineering, fucking hoops you have to jump through to get a game to look like that, and to run like that. I just think that like the theory for September. Again, Slim's going to come out when it's announced or a few days after that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of them in stores before it's even announced again. And then I think Neo and VR, if I were going to make a guess, I think Neo and VR come out the same day. But if not, I think Neo has to come out this year. I don't think you can hold it And all the rumors about them having to get patches through certification in September and stuff seem to line up with a September or an October and November release.
But that was before the E3 stuff, which we're not sure how much that did shake and what you could change.
Right, and there were rumors too that dev kits were going to go out around the time of the meeting, but they could be speccing on PC to the console. So, which is what happens with a lot of consoles, and as I've said before, notoriously happened with Vita until the very last minute with a lot of people making launch Vita games. So. And as far as the handheld, I don't think it's likely, but I just think it's interesting. And I think that because Vita was launched, I don't think, and this might be wishful thinking or whatever, but I don't, handheld gaming is declining and becoming a niche thing, but I don't think it's as niche as Vita is. I think that Vita came out at a strange time, and they messed the messaging up. The memory cards murdered it.
I mean, even the name of it, though, like it's such, to me, it's such a similar situation to the Wii U, where it's like that alone killed it. PlayStation Portable, people knew what that was.
Yeah, I was surprised they didn't call it PSP2, but
which would have made sense.
Especially because they number their console, so I don't know why they wouldn't number their handhelds. But I think that we have to remember the handheld came out in 2011 in Japan at a time where PS3 was kind of like just trucking along and struggling. Remember, we called 2011 the year of the PS3 because of all these kind of Starhawk and Twisted Metal, all the shit that we
thought Twisted Metal would solve it,
but
Dylan Joe.
So it kind of just came out, and everyone's like, it underwhelmed. PlayStation wasn't on top of the world. PlayStation's on top of the world now.
Yeah,
and could they go back and be like, we can do this again? And because I'm not of the mind that Vita lost the money, they probably made money on Vita. It's probably just not enough money to impress a big corporation like that. I don't think that they necessarily lost money on Vita. I just think that they have this powerful console now that's probably about 45 million units in the world that people really, really care about and really, really love. Could you make a device that talks to it more intimately? And with very open chatter in the gaming industry between sources and stuff like that, is it possible that Nintendo heard rumblings from, or Sony heard rumblings from what Nintendo was doing and realizing that like they need to stay competitive in the handheld space or they're going to relinquish it completely? And I don't know that that's a wise move. I don't think you win wars by relinquishing fronts and just abandoning them. I
don't know. I'm gonna disagree with you. I think that it probably would be wise of them to stop marketing to handhelds because it's clearly moved to mobile. Like why would I buy Vita when I can play games of almost the same quality on my phone? Like the processors in cell phones now are, on par with what we're seeing in handhelds. They're certainly better than the quality we're seeing in the 3DS. Like I love my 3DS, but like look at the graphics and the gameplay, right? I mean, it's not even comparable. And so I think that they look at their console sales and say, hey, we've clearly won this console generation so far. Why would we keep putting investment into Vita or Vita 2 when we can put that into PS5?
Yeah, you could, or you could have it both ways. And that's my whole thing is the argument. If I were going to market a new handheld, it would be I would disparage the shit out of the mobile market because it deserves it. It's terrible. And you can say like,
Marcus tried that though, and it didn't work out for him.
PSP Marcus, to say you can play games on your phone, but they're garbage.
And you can play
games. That's
so
not true.
People want tactile. People want tactile experiences. Devs do not want to make games
that aren't tactile too, though. It's like
people want the opposite. Simple,
guys,
short, entertaining experiences. They don't necessarily need Uncharted Golden Abyss like in their hand.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's the game you want. The Vita has persisted in a niche without those AAA games because that's not what that's what they realized that they didn't want. That's the problem with Vita.
They realized that they want the iOS games.
They realized they want Thomas Was Alone, right? Like that's the game that they want.
They want indie games. The mobile market sucks. I don't know how like anyone could ever look at that storefront and not say anything else. Tens of thousands of games have gone there to die. They're all clones. They're garbage. Developers, hundreds and if not thousands of developers have lost their fucking shirts trying to develop games for that platform because no one gives a shit. No one wants to pay anything there.
Lots of companies have made hundreds of millions of dollars.
No, not lots of companies haven't made hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes,
There's a few companies that have made a bundle of money, and then for every king, there's literally 1,000 companies you've never heard of that have gone out of business because no one bought their game. So I totally disagree with that.
Gaming is the exact same way. It is. Like, if you think about what's successful on console and what's successful on PC, it's the same way. There's a couple kings of the mountain, but there's thousands of developers who are making indie games or smaller games who lose everything. Like we've talked previously about like the disappearance of middleware, right? Like how it's
your
just
THQs.
Like, it's like the big guys and just the little guys. I mean, like the guys who are at the bottom, like they don't make money very often. Like people, you look at a company like Young Horses with Octodad, like they're like a beacon for success. Like, hey, our games hold a lot. Or, Psyonix with Rocket League, we kind of shot for the moon and we got it. But like those stories are few and far between.
I suppose I can name you 25 games on PSN that came out in the last year that probably made money, and I bet you couldn't name 5 massive games on mobile that came out in the last year that made the amount of money that those games made. So the point is that people go to those.
Disagree. I could, but that's okay.
People are not making games on mobile that are making a lot of money. For every Monument Valley or something like that you have a huge
people
failure.
are.
Yeah, but you're thinking about it
There's
differently.
a lot of people that aren't, but
Colin,
people
you're thinking
are.
about mobile games in the way that you like mobile games. You're not thinking about like Clash of Clans or, Kim Kardashian's game or games like, like anything that Kabam makes that, like I've had a secret obsession with. But, like there's a lot of mobile games out there that aren't considered by a lot of hardcore gamers to be traditional games. But the fact of the matter is they are games and they make hundreds of millions of dollars a month. And these games exist, and the people who make the hardware see the trends. As you said, heat mapping, they see where people are spending their money in the mobile marketplace, and it's not in handheld games, it's in mobile games.
I didn't say it was in handheld games. I'm just saying that they haven't given a thriving market to make the comparison that you don't have to necessarily have a game on PS4. PSN's getting flooded actually with crap now, which I've been arguing about for about a year, but it's easier and more likely to make money, and there are literally 3 or 4 companies of publishers of mobile games that make the amount of money you're talking about. And there are 25 viable publishers of games on console with a much smaller install base. I think it's kind of just obvious. Like it's kind of self-evident, right? Like
on consoles, yes, but not on handhelds.
No, but not on handhelds. But there is 3DS is a successful handheld. Square Enix has found a lot of success on the handheld with random games. And Vita in Japan, games are still coming out. They're still selling 20 to 25,000 units a week. So there's a market over there for those as well. The argument I'm trying to make is that to market a handheld, it has to come at the sake of making the point that the bottom has been reached in the mobile market, which was reached, the race to the bottom happened years ago. No one wants to pay money for games on that platform. The microtransaction model is predatory.
I'm just gonna agree to disagree. People are paying lots of money for games.
Whales
on
are
mobile.
playing lots of money. The conversion rate on these games is in even double digits in terms of percentage.
But what does it matter if the money's being made?
Guys, we're not going to argue this anymore. If you think that money is being made by companies left, right, and center on mobile, you're wrong. I don't know how else to say that. There are big publishers and big developers that are making money on a few games. It's often said that if you don't have your game marketed or it's not on the top 10 list or it's not premiered, it's dead. It's done. That's not the case on console, and that's not the case on traditional handhelds. It's just not. Like I don't understand how that argument can be made. People do not want to pay money for games on that unless you use predatory microtransactions, and they make money from whales. They make money from 1 or 2%, just like Pokemon Company or just like Niantic was making on Pokemon Go. Most people were not spending money on that game, So yeah, they found a hit that no one's gonna play in a year. Like I don't like it.
But
it just
isn't that
seems
every
kinda
game
self-evident.
ever? Like a console game? Like how many console games are people playing a year after or 2 years after
They paid
release?
$60 at the point of release for the game.
Yeah, most people play them, don't even finish them. Over 90%, right? Don't even finish the game that they buy.
That's not the argument. The argument is that the money was already made, so people go back and make another game there. It doesn't matter if they're playing the game a day later; they paid for it. That's the argument. They paid $60 for it, or 40, or 20, or 10. The free-to-play market's almost dead on console, with a rare exception. And the guys that were the tip of the spear in that, like CCP with Dust 514 or something like that, they died. That game died. There are very few examples of that.
Free-to-play is a whole different conversation.
So what do you think of these PlayStation rumors? Let us know in the comments below. Share the video with your friends. And of course, keep coming back here to kindafunny.com to see all the dumb shit we do in this studio. Until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.